Good afternoon and welcome to today's Whakawhiti Kōrero PBS. I'm so glad that you were able to join us for a conversation with Sarah Hearn, principal at Kumeroa Primary School near Palmerston North. As always, these conversations are held in order to support Pause, Breathe, Smile trained educators in implementing this mindfulness-based intervention in their kura. I want to first give a huge thank you to Southern Cross, our funder, for making Pause, Breathe, Smile available for free to all primary and intermediate schools across Aotearoa. So let's open today with a brief practice, a brief mindfulness practice. I know that this is maybe the first time you've had today to kind of sit down and collect yourself, maybe to take a couple of deep breaths together. And so I would love it if you would join me in doing a brief practice. And today is one of our new guided audio tracks that we are rolling out across this year on the Pause, Breathe, Smile website for you to use in your own classrooms. So this is first time out of the gate. So you get an early taste of something you can use with your learners. So the one we're going to do today is called Being a Friend to Yourself. So sit comfortably with a straight back and let your belly relax. Allow your eyes to drift closed and a smile to appear on your face. And we listen to the mindfulness bell together. We're going to use our mindful breathing and our imagination in this practice to explore what it feels like to be a friend. Let's begin by noticing each in-breath and each out-breath. As you notice your breathing, see if you can remember a time when a friend of yours was hurting a little bit. Remember noticing that they were feeling sad? Remember how it felt to be a friend to them. By reassuring them and by helping them to feel a little less alone. Perhaps you put your arm around their shoulders and gave them a little hug. Maybe you just sat quietly together. Or maybe you gave some encouragement or some kind words to help. Breathing in and breathing out. Do you remember that feeling of being a kind friend? Now, can you remember a time when you were hurting a little bit? Can you imagine doing those very same kind things you did for your friend, for yourself? Maybe first, you just notice the hurting that you're feeling. Then you can give yourself some reassurance, saying kind words to yourself like, I'm here for me. Let's try using those words with our mindful breathing. Breathing in, silently saying, I'm here. Breathing out, silently saying, for me. Breathing in, I'm here. Breathing out, for me. Just giving yourself these kind words and comfort with each in-breath and each out-breath. And now, as you breathe in and out, maybe you can imagine wrapping yourself up in a cozy blanket, a warm blanket of kindness. Maybe you'd even like to wrap your own arms around your chest in a gentle hug, or place your hand on your heart or on your belly. You can learn to be a friend to yourself when you're hurting, just like you do for others when they're hurting. Breathing in, I'm here. Breathing out, for me. Sometimes we're better at being kind and compassionate to others than we are to ourselves, but we deserve love and compassion too. What if you can be as good of a friend to yourself as you are to others? Breathing in, I'm here. Breathing out, for me. See if you can carry that awareness, this friendliness toward yourself into your day. And now we listen to the bell together. Now I would like to introduce our guest today, Sarah Hearn. Sarah has been trained 3 times in Pause, Breathe, Smile. She's very lucky. The first time she was trained as a sole teacher in Wellington. So she came along to a regional training, which we used to do. Pause, Breathe, Smile was fairly new. And as deputy principal of St. Peter's Secondary in Palmerston North, Sarah was looking for ideas for supporting learner well-being. And the school was seeing academic success among their learners, but then students were facing a lot of difficulty 1 to 3 years after they left school. And so Sarah started out with just one class of year 10 students, and she's going to tell us a bit about what that was like shortly. Then her second time getting trained was for the intermediate school at St. Peter's for years 7 and 8. And again, Sarah was coordinating a well-being program. She was the only one running it, so it was a one-person job at that time. And she started using mindfulness techniques and herself, and also with students outside of the formal lessons. And now Sarah has just been retrained recently for the 3rd time at Kumeroa Primary, a small rural school, when all the staff were trained with the whole school approach. Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really looking forward to talking with you and hearing some of your experiences and your insight.
Thank you. Yeah. Because I'd just like to say I don't feel like the expert it sounded like. So and there has been a team around me. So yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. So where we'd like to start is that, you know, you've used Pause, Breathe, Smile mindfulness practice with kids across a wide range of ages. And how do you the content is the same in the handbook, you know, each of the times you've been trained, and yet how do you tailor the approach that you take based on the age and developmental needs of the learners who are in your classroom?
Yeah, I guess that's the thing I really did think about, because as I was training the first time, I had in my head that I'd be using it for secondary students, and it was very tailored for primary. But I think as educators, we do this all the time. It's in our tone, it's in the nuances, it's in the very small details of the examples we use and the way we speak to them. But actually, there's a lot of similarities, I have to say, between a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you shared with me that at the secondary school where you were DP for 4 years, the initial impetus for seeking out Pause, Breathe, Smile was that your students were showing very high levels of academic success. But then you were seeing they were running into issues and difficulty with their well-being after they left school. Can you say more about that, you know, the program that you were working with and why you thought mindfulness might be a way to help with that?
Yeah. So we had a Connect to Succeed program, which is basically a mentoring program, and we ran that twice a week for 45 minutes with all of our kids school-wide. As part of that program, we started looking at things like how to learn, financial literacy, that kind of stuff. But we decided as part of that to start measuring and keeping data on our kids 5 years after they'd finished school and tracking kind of what most of them were up to. And we saw particularly our merit excellence kids really struggling when they left school. And we just didn't feel like we were equipping them to be able to deal with life and the stresses that brings. So we knew we had to do something, and Pause, Breathe, Smile seemed like a really good way to do that. We trialled it to start with year 10s, but actually we put a mindfulness program together from year 7 to 13, and that's where with the Southern Cross sponsorship we were able to do the whole year 7 and 8, and that became the foundation for our mindfulness program. And then we built on it from there, but it set the kids up really well. Yeah.
So I have to ask, having older children myself, you know, in my family, who I'm responsible for, sometimes they balk a little bit if I say, well, let's do some mindful breathing, or let's check in with how we're feeling right now. You know, I kind of get the eye rolls and the, you know, mom thing. So, you know, you as a teacher, can you speak to what was it like when you initially introduced mindfulness practice with those older students? What did you expect to happen? Were you prepared? And then what actually ended up happening when you brought it into the class?
Yeah, well, I have to say I expected a disaster. Yeah, and So I ran with that, and I picked the trickiest year 10 class I could find, the ones I thought were least likely to engage. Being in charge of pastoral care, they were the kids I was most familiar with, and I thought, well, if I can do it with them, we can do it with anyone. And so part of that was a testing thing. They did all the eye rolling and all the stuff and all the things, but it's a few clever things that you do. You start with chocolate for mindful eating, don't you? That's the that's the way. And actually, I did that 2 weeks running, and with that, they were dubious at best. And I made a mental note. We're going to give these guys 4 weeks of disaster lessons, really, that we'll run through. But actually, I only took 2, and they were well in. And I think for some of our kids who struggle the most at school, for them it was a place and it made sense, and they could just rest. They could just be. And it worked far better than I had thought with those. And a lot of them spoke to me several years later saying, "Hey, Miss, that was really good. I'm still using that stuff." Yeah. Mm.
So I know when we've spoken before, and you said one of the things that maybe you need to do, teachers who are working with older children or resistant children, is that it's okay to show them the reason why we're doing this, right? So can you speak, how did you frame up this idea with those older or more resistant learners? What kinds of things did you say?
Yeah, and I guess we do that too with our littlies, give them the why. So why are we doing this? This is for when you are feeling really excited. This is for when you're feeling really down. This is for when you're feeling angry, and consistently applying the why to them. So for those high-end year 10s, we are doing this because it will help you. We're doing this and the because. So, I'm just trying to think of an example, but when you do the mindfulness practice, this is going to allow your brain to rest. This is going to improve your brain pathways, all of those things for them. It will improve your academic results. This is a tool you can use in your sport, which is a big ticket. Telling them, I know New Zealand rowing uses it, I know the league team uses it, the All Blacks use it. It's a tool that's well used to increase your performance in multiple areas. And to start with, you have to run with them making fun of it. Yeah, and that's okay. Yeah. And then, it's sort of part of it, and you kind of buy in, and away you go and move them from there. Yeah. But every second of that delivery, you're looking, and when you feel like them hopping off, you stop them and explain. Yeah. But like a really good teacher does with anything that you're teaching them. Yeah. Mm.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is that we don't need to kind of keep it behind the scenes, or keep it behind a curtain why we're doing this. It actually, in some ways, it might help kids to to really hear transparently, hey, this is why, why you're learning maths, why you're learning literacy. This is actually just as important. And did you talk about in the program, the Connect to Succeed, did you talk about the findings with those young people about, hey, things might seem good now, but challenges are going to come, so this is why we're doing this now? Did you make it that explicit?
Yeah, that explicit, but also, for that particular group, and they're not all like that, but for that particular group, they were really familiar with being in my office for a variety of reasons. This is going to help you with that. It's going to help you before you do something silly. It's going to help you when something dumb's happened. It's all of that. And so just naming it, and having a bit of a laugh. Man, you're really going to need this, especially if you're going to behave like that. And when they get in there, oh man, we're going to do that pause, breathe, smiling again. Yeah, get you calm. Yeah. So and kids kind of get that connection, with that. Yeah, they do. Mm.
So you're in a really different setting now, right? You're at a small rural primary school. Why did you want to get your whole staff trained up at Pause, Breathe, Smile, and how does it fit in with your school's kaupapa? Yeah.
So we're really heading down a relational pathway and implementing restorative practice, that kind of stuff in the school. So looking at deepening the relationships, and with that, Pause, Breathe, Smile fits really naturally into there, because it gives our teachers and our students the tools to understand emotion, to be able to work through things themselves. I think we want the best for our kids. If we train them up in primary school so they can understand how they're feeling, why they're feeling that way, and that it's okay. We set them up really well for the rest of their lives with those skills. And little kids they love it. They're right into it. Mm. Yeah.
I often say when I'm doing professional development trainings, with educators around the country, I
Yeah.
say when we talk about emotion regulation and how emotions, rise and fall just like our
Yeah.
breathing does, and if we're patient with it and we
Yeah.
work with the tools that we have with our mindful breathing and our movement, that feeling can pass. And I always say, why didn't someone teach me this when I was 8? Because I'm turning 40, and it would have saved me so much trouble to understand, oh, that's what emotions are. And that's how I can ride them out and work with them. I think this program does a lot of demystifying and kind of normalizing the wide range of things we go through in a given day. And that's just as true for a 50-year-old or a 30-year-old or a 10-year-old, and how great it is that, that you've now been working with a whole generation of Kiwi kids, helping them to understand that. So I do know that your school has a really interesting, can you speak a little bit about your bush days and how that connects to mindfulness practice with your bush days?
So our bush days have been going on pre-me. So every Monday we head into the bush, and our kids spend the day in there doing all sorts of wonderful learning, lighting fires with flints, that kind of stuff, playing, swinging on vines, making huts, whatever we've got in mind for them. We're just starting our mindfulness journey, but straight away the teachers made the link, especially that everything is connected, because we're really connected when we head into the bush, and that time and space that we create every week. Mindfulness is just a really natural place for that to happen, and I guess we're really fortunate. The bush is just up the road, and to actually hop into nature for a whole day and allow our kids, and at the beginning of every day and the end of every day, they get a little bit of a moment, and we're looking at ways we connect that and extend that further and further as they run through the 8-week Pause, Breathe, Smile course. We're not through it yet. They're just starting, but really excited about that. Yeah. I
mean, I think the interconnection, so lesson 7, about interconnectedness and the importance of seeing our connection to the past, our connection to the future, right? Our ancestors and those who come after us, and sustainability and taking care of the earth. That's such a natural fit, like ecology. And so your students and any students at a New Zealand school who get to get out into the bush or get out. I've been to several schools that have, just beautiful access to green spaces. And that is, it really is learning outside the classroom, linking the content, like good teachers always do, finding those connections. So how lucky that they get to spend that time with Papa Tuanuku. So, Sarah, you mentioned to me once that you believe that teachers set the weather. Can you say more about that? That sounds like a very powerful position. How does teacher well-being and teacher awareness ripple out into the classroom or set those conditions?
I guess we've got a whole lot of educators around there, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I certainly have. If I have a grumpy day in the classroom, everybody's grumpy. It just gets harder and harder through the day. And being really aware of that our tone and our way we speak, and we know this as educators, that sometimes it's really hard, you're frustrated at the day, but I've watched teachers after they've been trained in Pause, Breathe, Smile to actually, as they're heading into a classroom and you can feel them, the tension building up, they might be worried or whatever, stopping at the door, just pausing, breathing, smiling and walking in. And what a difference it makes to those tamariki to have a teacher who's aware of their own emotions, is monitoring themselves, and able to moderate what is said or not said in the tone of it, because it's often in the nuances. That for our children.
And Sarah, am I correct that your background, like what you studied, was with sport and performance or sport psychology?
PE. I'm PE teacher by trade.
So about that, I mean, you maybe even before Pause, Breathe, Smile already bought into that idea of like the body mind connection and all that. How does that play out for you? Like, how do you, when you're in the classroom or you're in with a learner who's maybe having a tough day, in addition to using the language of the program, are there ways that you see that connection playing out in how you kind of guide a child who's having a tough time?
Many. I think there's a few examples, but I think that link between mind and body, how you feel, there is a time in the classroom for a teacher to take a powerful pose and a time not to, so that's the first link. But also, you know, when really tricky things happen, and I think of an example where I had a year 10 boy in my year 11 maths class, and I had the numeracy kids, so those of you who know that they're the kids who struggle with their learning a bit. And my year 10 thought it was really smart idea to take a tack and put it in his hand and then shake one of my massive 6'3" boys' hands so it bled. Now, the other boy thought that he would have a go at killing the year 10, who smartly ran away. But for me, understanding that I only had to get this big 6'3" boy for 30 seconds to be able to say to him, just stop, breathe. I just need 30 seconds, breathe for 30 seconds. Now he, after 30 seconds, he was able to say, oh, I'm good, miss, no problem, I'm okay. And just having that understanding that anger flare isn't going to last forever. Just have to hold him for a short period of time, and you know, a year 10 gets to live and realise how stupid he was. So, but it works the other way. I just had a little year 5 boy who really struggles with his emotions, and we had the robotics people in, and he was so excited and he so wanted to do it, and he just couldn't manage the excitement of it. It was all over the show, and to grab him, and I had to do it 3 times in an hour, but just grabbing him and stopping him. And this is pre starting the pause, breathe, smile. Just stop and take 3 deep breaths, feet firmly on the ground. And he was able to concentrate for the next 20 minutes until he had to do it again. Yeah. But the negative and positive emotions, same kind of thing for children, you know, to manage those and know that won't last. It's going to ride over. Yeah. So I think, yeah, that's some of the things. Yeah.
So, you know, what advice, I mean, you're already giving us a lot of gems and kind of details of ways that you've used it yourself, but what advice would you have for someone who maybe has just gotten trained, maybe just one time, not like you, one-time training, who's just starting out, you know, maybe they're about to start lesson 1, or they're just kind of going their first time through.
Yeah.
What kinds of suggestions, advice, or encouragement would you have for them about what to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think just roll up your sleeves and get into it. I think that's the first thing. And also that manual is fantastic. You know, you just follow it along, and it's built to build on techniques and on understanding. And so you can follow the manual and do that, but also know that your first things are going to happen. You're going to hit the first mindfulness, and there's going to be farting and coughing and all sorts of really exciting things going on. And to avoid the tell off and bring it back to the why, and maybe try again. And there might be some that you have to have a quiet word to, and so that their mate can have a turn, and thinking about where they sit. But to persevere with it, and it could take 3 or 4 for the kids to get it. But some of that stuff comes out of embarrassment and newness for our kids. And so just running with it and just getting in there and doing it, because the kids deserve it. They deserve to know and understand their body and their mind and what's going on. Yeah.
So you've done this program when you were kind of one of the only ones doing it. What do you think about the whole school approach? So you just had all your staff trained up, recently. What do you think are the strengths of, doing it kind of that way, as opposed to just an individual teacher doing it in one class? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. I actually think an individual teacher is not very effective, really, because you've got no common language. So it's useful for that class or whatever you do it with. I was really aware of that at the time. So part of my training was to just look at the program and see if anyone, if it was worth it, if it was something that we thought we should do. But it was never our intention, if it was, to just have one teacher. I think the benefit of the teachers running it with their own kids is huge, because it's that deepening relationship and connection and developing a shared language in their classroom. So my opinion, it wouldn't be so useful having someone come in to do it, which I have done, but that's not so useful. You want to do it with your own kids. But that shared language in school, but also in amongst the staff, developing that comes out quite naturally. We start to support each other, help each other. Yeah, joke. Maybe we need to pause, breathe, smile here. Yeah, life's getting a bit tense. Yeah, it's a really nice thing to have company and to have a few giggles. I had our 3rd year teacher come out, and she's just so excited because she'd had the first disaster lesson, and she came out really disheartened and things. But the second one, she came zipping out. I did it. They did the whole thing. And the boy she named, who's super wriggly, he loved it. He said that was the best thing, Miss. So I think that's really exciting when you can talk about it. Yeah.
I think something I love about when we've talked about this before, you and me, Sarah, is just that there's a sense of that you have a sense of like lightness and curiosity and humor about it. I think that there is this misunderstanding or a misconception that mindfulness is about being serious and and heavy and just like very like it's very it's almost this thing that kind of takes you to another plane.
Yeah.
But you're saying kids are going to pass gas and kids are going to giggle and someone's going to drop something and we can bring mindfulness in, not as something that's heavy and serious, but actually that shows us kind of the humor and the lightness in life as well. And it's both of those things can be true.
I think too, some of it's teacher amusement as well. There's a couple of moments I had a particularly expressive year 7 boy, and after we did the chocolate mindfulness eating, he just couldn't contain himself. He's like, who knew chocolate could blow your mind? And then the next week we gave him sultanas. Now, unbeknown to me, he hated them. So he popped it in his mouth, and I was watching them mindfully eat, and he hated it, but he kept it in there. And his facial expressions on the thing that he hated, eating that mindfully, was wonderful. I've lived off that for quite some time. Especially when he's being a nuisance. Oh, I got to watch you eat a sultana slowly.
Well, and that's the thing about we always say with mindful eating is it doesn't doing something mindfully doesn't mean it's going to be more pleasant. It just means that it will be a richer experience. And it sounds like you're still milking that one for all it's worth.
Yeah. He was very relieved, didn't have to eat the whole box. Yeah.
So do you have, this is a question I'm going to spring on you. We haven't talked about this. Do you have a favorite lesson? So we've got the 8 lessons. Do you have one that kind of stands out to you as like, that's the one you can't wait to get to?
Yeah, I actually just love that everything is connected for so many reasons. And I think particularly as our kids move into their teenage years, knowing that they are connected to everyone and that they are important, I think the messaging that we give our kids with that is huge. And I know we build to it, but for our children, we want them to know they're important, that they are valued, that they are needed. And I think that lesson really highlights that for them.
Yeah, that's a beautiful lesson, and it fits in so well with the bush time, right? Like it's they're out in it and they're doing the breathing with the green plants and all of those parts of the practice. Have you seen much of a shift or a difference over the last several years with what kinds of issues you're seeing coming up around with the kids who you're working with, in terms of like COVID and anxiety and things like that? Or has there not been much of a change? Like what kinds of things are you seeing in your office?
Yeah, I think as a secondary principal, as secondary DP with pastoral care, I was seeing a lot of high-end things going on. So we had to do lots of stuff to be preemptive. We had one of our lovely teachers trained in dialectic behaviour therapy to augment what is done with the pause, breathe, smile with our older children. High anxiety around those teenage puberty years. And in our little people, I think it's a little bit different for them and in this school rural community that we're in, but you're watching carefully for behaviour issues, you're looking for more tears, tiredness, that kind of stuff. We have the conversations, our 5-year-olds, so we're worried about dying from COVID and, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And you'd like them to have a childhood when you protect them from all those things. Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, if anyone who's watching wants to drop a question into the chat box, we're certainly open to fielding some responses. Let me just see. I'm seeing some people saying that chocolate. I saw Vanessa saying chocolate is such a buy-in. that is a common thread. And so Miriam is joking, saying maybe now I feel like offering them olives. So we're going the opposite route of chocolate. But if anyone has any specific questions for Sarah, feel free to feel free to chime in or make any comments that you would like. But Sarah, I was wondering, you said something about, teachers kind of having their own self-awareness or taking that breath before they step into the classroom. Are there other ways that you yourself apply, practices of mindfulness that you think support your work in the schools, or just support you even as a person? Like, what are some ways that you have seen mindfulness kind of make a connection in your life for well-being?
I think the big take for me is being aware of my emotions at any one time. So both in a deputy principal role, pastoral care, and as a principal, you front a lot of negative emotion quite often, and sometimes you're the place that people sound off or have a wee yell at or whatever. And I know the educators here will be nodding their heads around that. That's something that happens. But having that thought in the back of my head that it's okay, and for the people you're dealing with, that this will pass. For myself, being aware of how I'm feeling about it, not taking it personally, all those deep breath things that we do. I think that helps quite a lot in that. Also aware of my own triggers and own points. So it's just understanding that this thing makes me a bit cross. So maybe I need not to be dealing with it right now, to allow that emotion to dissipate so that I can keep thinking properly and deal with things. But that really helps. I need time and space every day. I'm an extrovert. I love talking and being around people, but I just need to take some time every day just to be still and just have that mindfulness time, peace and quiet. Otherwise I get super grumpy.
Are you sure you're an extrovert? And is that something that you talk about explicitly, with your learners? Like, do you, we've talked about that shared language or that shared lexicon. Is that something where, maybe if you notice yourself getting a little triggered or whatever, you might even say or model that, to a young child or to another teacher? Is that something you do?
Yep, there's been many times I've done that, with a heightened teenager in particular. Actually, right now, we both need to stop. And we need to stop because I'm feeling pretty cross and you look like you're feeling pretty cross as well. And so we're just going to take a moment. So it's a regular articulation. With the little people, actually, it's just allowing them, it's okay. We don't have to deal with it now, but I need you nice and safe and I need you okay. And one of the wee tests I often give them is I put a drink of water and something to eat in front of them. When a child is really wound up, they can't eat, they won't eat, but they're often extremely hungry after. So once they start eating, I'm in.
So one last question before we kind of start winding down. I was wondering, what kinds of communication do you have with the whānau at your school? Like when you decided to bring Pause, Breathe, Smile to your current school, is that something where you sent something home to teachers, to parents, you let them know, like, how did you share and helped parents understand why is this a central thing that you're going to be doing?
I think this particular community was really ready for it. We've got a couple of parents who actively practice mindfulness themselves, which is fantastic. Our community was concerned about their children, particularly over COVID. And I sent home the Pause, Breathe, Smile website for them to look at. We had just multiple positive comments. I didn't actually get a negative one on this. At a secondary school, I got, because that was several years ago, 5-6 years ago, more skepticism because it wasn't so well known, so well talked about at that point in time, but nobody was really upset about it. Some were a little worried that it might be a bit religious, but once I reassured of that was okay. So I guess this time it's been really easy and that the parents have been just super grateful.
Anecdotally, I think a lot of principals and school leadership would say similar things to you. Like even 2 or 3 years ago, it was a different matter, taking it to the board of trustees or taking it to the whānau and, letting the community know. And now it's kind of to the point where I hear from a lot of principals and teachers, when parents are polled, the number one thing they're worried about is their children's well-being. Like that actually they're saying, yes, I want them to be able to read well and label things on a map and be able to do their maths, but actually, can those things even happen if my child is anxious about going to school, or isn't making it to school, right? Because we know attendances are down, and it's you know, things can be kind of patchy with how the last couple of years have been. So I think it's I mean, I'm just echoing what you said, that it does seem that many more people are you know, more willing to come online and come on board with this understanding that mindfulness is a major aspect of supporting well-being. You know, it's looking at all of those domains of who we are as people, not just intellectually or even just physically, right? Spiritual and social as well. So do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to you'd like to leave us with? Maybe somebody's still a little nervous, or, you know, thinking, okay, I've been trained, you know, Sarah makes it look so easy. What advice do you have, you know, for somebody who's just now getting their feet under them?
Yeah, I guess if you've got any illusions that I make it look easy, you just need to get in my classroom. It's very real. And the kids are kids, and yeah, and it's just okay. You know, it is a great program that does get worked through, and as with anything that we teach, you know, there's some ups and downs in there, but actually, as someone highlighted, you do get to eat chocolate at the end of it, which is often a win. And yeah, no, it's good. And yeah, no, I've just really enjoyed it, and enjoyed watching the difference in the kids to push through into it. To be fair, for me, it was an uncomfortable thing to do at the start, and to jump in there with them and to watch the growth and the excitement in the kids learning and taking ownership of themselves. You know, that's what student agency is really all about, is the kids understanding and knowing and having control over that. And that's pretty powerful to share. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you put that really beautifully, that idea of empowerment and self-mastery. You know, that often if we only see our reactions to things, we feel like we're just at the whim of, you know, things beyond our control. Whereas you've told several stories about, you know, children and young people realizing, oh, I actually have a choice here. You know, like this thing happened to me. I got a tack in my hand. That doesn't feel good, but I have options and I have choices. You know, I don't have to beat this child to a pulp. Thankfully. Well, Sarah, I really appreciate your time, and I know everyone else who's been on the call appreciates it as well. Several people have said thank you specifically to you for a wonderful session and clarity, and you know, helping to refresh their memories on the content and how to do this program. So really genuinely appreciate you sharing your energy and your time and your I know you say you're not an expert, but your wisdom with us. So thank you again for being here. And to the rest of you, thank you for joining us today. You know, this Tuesday afternoon, we are going to be holding another Whakawhiti Kōrero PBS. It will be Monday, the 20th of June at the same time, 3:30 to 4:15. So keep an eye out for the Pause Breathe Smile newsletter, which will let you know who's going to be featured and who's going to be here speaking on what topic. To be determined, to be announced. But Sarah, thank you again so much. Thank you to all of you for joining us. May you all go well.